Hey Joe, good morning here from Chicago. I got your last call, and wow, there is a lot to talk about. We've had such a whirlwind week of activity. First of all, we took Jade to get her ears pierced. Ow! And then you had PlayStation Mobile shutting down, which, to be honest with you, I didn't even realize was as long for around as it had been. I kind of knew that it was a thing, but it was just so unceremoniously launched and then deleted by Sony that it just kind of came and went with a whimper. But that's very sad because now we have all of those games that were on the platform that are just vanished into the ether like that. And I got your call, which gave me a lot to chew over and digest. And so I want to respond to a couple of the points that you made here. First of all, just a quick note about game endings. Now, I feel that game endings that leave the world kind of open and leave a lot of stuff to your imagination, all that really does, and maybe I'm being cynical, is make it so that the publishers can sell you more DLC after that because they're extending the storyline. Because we're always looking for more. Games and some other types of media don't end with happily ever after, riding off into the sunset endings, usually, especially in this day and age, because we always want more. We always want to experience more from the same world with those same characters. But what I find is interesting about it is that games actually tackle this issue more than any other medium, I would say. They're sort of unique among other artistic media because there isn't really any other form I can think of that talks about what goes on after the story ends. It's the kind of thing that we've always talked about in theater. What were you doing before you came into this room, and where are you going after? That kind of thing. Really, the only example I can think of is one of your favorite movies, The Graduate. Spoiler warning for The Graduate, where the ending of that is you think it's going to be happily ever after, and they just kind of dwindle off. They fizzle out with no real fanfare, kind of like PlayStation Mobile in a way. And the way the games tackle this issue is by having the character say, sometimes after the end credits, something like, there's still work to be done, or I'm still not through with my mission, or whatever the line may be.
There's still work to do here in Arkham City.
My name was Alex Mercer, and my work is almost done.
But let me give you an example of when this does not work, and that is in Batman Arkham City, where, spoiler warning for Batman Arkham City, at the end of the game, Batman carries a dead Joker out of the theater, and he's completely despondent and depressed and doesn't say anything to anybody after that. In fact, they reference that in future DLCs. But when you're playing in the open world mode, every time you switch from Catwoman to Batman, he always says,
there's still work to do here in Arkham City.
Or something like that. And it's kind of like, well, you were just feeling sad and lonely because you lost your best friend / worst enemy a second ago, so what changed there? And to be honest with you, I think that kind of a line is a cop-out. I think that it's not really an elegant solution like you mentioned with Red Dead Redemption. It's just kind of, well, this is the best we could do, so here you go. Just take it. As for MOBAs, I've never really gotten into them because I always have a little bit of trouble playing with strangers online because I can't really get myself that devoted to a community where I'll become good enough to be a boon to my team as they're playing the game. I kind of lack that competitive drive, and I also lack the means to put in the amount of practice hours necessary to do that. So I always feel like I'll never become good enough. And even if I do become good enough, I'll never actually be good enough to play the game well. That's just my thought. And to answer your question about whether I plan on recording some gameplay footage, I do, in fact, plan on doing that. I'm just trying to work out some of the kinks and practice and do some test runs. But I do plan on doing that, playing some games through with some audio commentary. So that should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to doing that. And now, on to today's topic. I don't even really know what to say. Just a few hours after you posted your call, we got the news that President of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata, passed away. And it's been a very sad week for people all over the gaming industry. And I gotta say, I kind of found myself taking the news pretty hard. It's very rarely that I'll feel so sad at the loss of somebody famous or prominent or notable. The last time that I felt this way was when Robin Williams died, but the difference there being that I actually met him once, and I actually interacted with him once. So I felt like I had at least a stronger connection to him than I do with somebody that I've never met. But the thing about Satoru Iwata is that he did such great things and touched the lives of so many people for someone in his position as an executive. And I feel like when you lose someone like that in the world, it's it's especially tragic. Because he wasn't like your typical executive. He was famous for caring a lot about his employees. There's reports about how when Nintendo didn't reach their sales goal, he took a pay cut for himself rather than laying off employees, which I think is utterly phenomenal. You never ever hear about an executive doing that kind of thing. And I think that speaks to his character. It speaks to what a truly wonderful person he was and why so many people have felt such a loss in his passing. And if I may, I'd like to read a few quotes from the man himself just to highlight and illustrate how special a person he was. This first one has to do with choosing not to restructure Nintendo's staff when their sales fell short of the estimates. Quote, "If we reduce the number of employees for better short-term financial results, however, employee morale will decrease, and I sincerely doubt employees who fear that they may be laid off will be able to develop software titles that could impress people around the world. I also know that some employers publicize the restructuring plan to improve their financial performance by letting a number of their employees go, but at Nintendo, employees make valuable contributions in their respective fields, so I believe that laying off a group of employees will not help to strengthen Nintendo's business in the long run." And I don't know, maybe it's because of some kind of Japanese culture, sense of honor and duty, but you just never hear about executives saying things like that. And there are also stories about him actually like getting in and getting his hands dirty with like actual code on some of the games while he was president. And again, there's so many executives who wouldn't even dream to deign to work on the front lines with their employees working at such a low level. I'd like to read a couple more quotes that have been making their way around the internet. Quote, "On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer, but in my heart, I am a gamer." End quote. And also, quote, "Video games are meant to be just one thing, fun. Fun for everyone." End quote. Now, say what you will about Nintendo's history of the last few years to come out with some really weird kind of stuff that veer off of the normal path of other console developers. But let's not forget, it was under his term as president of Nintendo that they released the Wii. The Wii was not seen as a normal console. It had this weird kind of controller setup, and the thing you had to point at the screen, and it had another thing attached to it. But the Wii, I think, is the system that my dad took the most interest in. My dad, who hates video games and would never ever let me have video games as a kid growing up. I know I've talked about that on the show before. And I don't know if you remember, Joe, but you were there the day that I took my Wii home for the first time, and we were trying to play Wii Sports and figure the whole thing out and figure out how the thing actually worked. And my dad got up out of his seat and was like, "Hang on a second, let me try this out." And he grabbed the controller and he started like actually trying to figure out the game's systems. Anybody who's able to do that, to get my dad interested in video games, I think deserves all the respect in the world. And one last point, to go back to the quote about video games being fun for everyone. I don't think that what he actually meant by that was that all video games should just be fun. What I think he really meant by that is saying that video games are supposed to be inclusive. They're supposed to be fun for everyone. And I think that Satoru Iwata really did his best to try to embody that philosophy and make it so that the world of video games was one that could bring people together, that we could shake off our differences and break boundaries and just come together. I don't even really know what else to say at this point. I know that there's a lot more to be said, a lot of stuff that I left out, but I'm having trouble kind of putting my thoughts together and having trouble speaking, and I don't feel like anything I could say would actually do justice to the man and to his legacy. So rest in peace, Iwata-san.